Hi there, it's Dr. Sarah Gordon of the PhD Journey Unplugged podcast. I thought I would get on here this morning by myself and actually talk a little bit about my research and the theoretical framework that I conducted my research within. And so I conducted my research within a theoretical framework called the self-determination theory. Now, something about research and con completing a dissertation project on a PhD program is that usually you ground your you come up with your research idea, but you have to pick a theoretical framework to ground that research within, unless you're developing a theoretical framework through your research. So as I started to look at the literature and look at research that had been conducted before my project, there's lots of my dissertation focused on exercise motivations with older triathletes. And there's lots of theoretical frameworks on motivation. But I chose something called self-determination theory, and here it is. And it was developed by Richard Ryan and Edward Deasy. And sadly, on Valentine's Day, Professor Deasy passed away. So that was kind of a big deal within the community of researchers and practitioners and educators and individuals who believe in self-determination theory and use it as theoretical frameworks for their work. Now, why did I want to come on here and talk about this? Because in episode 47 with my friend Dr. Tahir, I talk about some of the fears that I'm working through and talking about the blessing that I have in my life and to go and speak at present my research at an international conference and to travel abroad to participate in this conference. So all blessings, and I'm excited for it. The conference happens to be focused on self-determination theory. And so it'll be an interesting time because, you know, Professor DC just passed away. But it's also an opportunity for us who are doing work within this theoretical framework to continue his work, to continue his legacy, and to show why it's important. Why is it important to talk about self-determination theory? So I wanted to get on here, talk a little bit about how I used it with my research, and then bridge this gap to episode 48 when my friend Andrew Schubauer is going to come back on, and we're going to talk about how we talked about enjoyment in episode 46. Dr. Tahir and I just, expanded on that a bit in our conversation yesterday in terms of the courage to grow. And when you allow yourself to grow and you allow yourself to put yourself in places that you can find enjoyment, where you can work towards self-actualization and doing things in your life that are deeply meaningful and have purpose to you, that as you go on that journey, you form these new identities, right? I decided to go back and get my PhD in my early 50s. I loved for 5 years being in that program as a PhD student. That was a new identity for me. I'd always worked in research, but I had never been a PhD student before. And so allowing myself to take that chance and take that leap of faith and go into that program really helped me form this new uh, part of my identity, of my being. Now finishing that program, and it'll be a year in May. I have my doctorate. Dr. Sarah Gordon will tell you in the beginning of that, settling into that title, I had some imposter syndrome. And then a good friend of mine, a mentor of mine who's been on the show, Dr. Dossie Brown, said, you're an emerging scholar. But it's just something that comes with newness, right? When we put ourselves into things that we enjoy, that we want to do, we tend to form these new identities. And I guess the key there is you don't have to just have one, this is who you are and this is the way your whole life will be. Some of us grow up in situations that we didn't have the opportunity to have autonomy and to figure out who we are at an early age. Sometimes people have to work through hard things from childhood and early adulthood and just in their lives that don't give them the freedom and the space to have the autonomy to grow in their identity. So, self-determination theory gives us a theoretical framework to understand human motivation, which I'm going to talk about. And then Andrew Schubauer and I on episode 48 are going to bridge this gap between these episodes, episode 46, 47, 48. And we're going to talk about how building identities, what does that look like? And why is enjoyment a huge part of that? Now, with all that said, before I get started, I also wanted to say, first of all, I love having this platform. You talk about new identities. I never thought I'd be a podcaster or I would educate through my podcast platform. So, one, I'm deeply grateful for those who listen to me and are walking this journey with me as I grow in the health promotion space, as I grow as a health promotion leader. My PhD is in leadership in health and human performance. So, I appreciate that support and encouragement. And, my journey's not always a straight path either. I'm trying to get myself back in the gym. I've had a couple little health setbacks, but, I'm getting there. And because I have an attitude, I'll never give up. And for me, I really truly enjoy being physically active. So that's what it's about, enjoyment. Okay. One more thing I just wanted to say is if you follow me on Instagram or Facebook, I'm at Dr. Sarah Gordon on Instagram. The PhD Journey Unplugged has a Facebook page, and I've been posting some updates on the guests that I have planned to come on pretty much into the middle of May, early summer. So I'm just blessed to have I feel so grateful to have these people coming on my show who I'm going to interview, and we're going to learn from them. These are people who are living highly autonomous lives. They're doing things in their life I'm not saying it doesn't take hard work to get to your goals, but their why and their purpose is so big that it's just it's extraordinary. And I want to interview them and I want to learn from them. And so I've put out there the list of guests that I have coming up. Now, obviously, schedules change and things happen, so it is always subject to change. But for the most part, that's what I have in place for the spring. And I have, many more kind of behind the scenes working on getting people scheduled. So these are coaches, these are athletes, these are academics. These are just, individuals who demonstrate being highly motivated to go after goals, to have the mental strength to overcome obstacles, to understand why physical activity and mental health and taking care of our bodies and, health and wellness and all those things are so important. And they go after it. They go after these goals. So they inspire me. I'm excited to have them on the show, and I hope it inspires you. Okay, so back to self-determination theory and this conference that I will be attending in end of June in Geneva, Switzerland. It can be applied in many different ways, okay? I have always been interested in exercise motivation. I wanted to study older triathletes, ages 65 and older, because I feel like if you are familiar with a term called ageism is a little bit of a prejudice towards as we age, that the assumption is that we should decline or get slower. The vision isn't of us doing Ironmans, right? Natalie Grabeau just did Kona last October at age 80. I mean, that truly is an exception at this point in time. But it doesn't mean it's not feasible. It doesn't mean if that's a goal that you have for yourself, you can't go after it. And there are plenty of older adults, and defining older adults, what I learned from my research, it depends on what organization. I mean, I went with the National Institute of Aging, which was 65 and older, but I think AARP is 55 and older. There's some ambiguity in where that officially starts to say an older adult. So I picked 65 and older, and I went with triathletes because they're training for swimming, biking, and running. And most likely they're doing strength training and yoga. And to me, by focusing my research on this group of people, I really want to understand what motivates them to keep going when ageism and our society and everything, works against that to a certain degree. So I, this was a year ago. I don't know if you can see it. This was my final defense. It's my presentation. And if I could figure out how to actually show you my presentation, I will do that one day. But like I said, I was exploring the exercise motivators. Sorry, one second. Okay, well, this is the little guy that's barking in the background. His name is Louie, and I knew it was kind of a little bit of a high risk situation trying to do this with him. I also have a chocolate lab here on the floor, recovering from ACL surgery. But, this is real life. I'm a real person. Do I try to look nice most of the times when I record? Yeah. But life gets lifey. And so now you got to meet little Louie. And I don't know. I did a social media post with him and it got more likes and more attention than anything I've done. So maybe Louie's the superstar for this podcast. All right, Louie. We'll put him down. Get back to work here. I'll try to get back to work. Okay, so why older triathletes? Because within self-determination theory. Because what I found actually is that a pattern that these individuals really enjoy being triathletes, really enjoy physical activity, really enjoy how it makes them feel, really enjoy the community that they're in. And so enjoyment was such a huge motivator for living these highly physically active lifestyles. Now, let me tell you a little bit about how that, where that falls within self-determination theory. And I'm going to try to show you a chart here. Uh, Here we go. Okay. So self-determination theory, I don't know if you can see that, but it's a continuum, okay? It's a continuum of how we're motivated. So we have things in our life, we can kind of be at one end of this continuum where we don't have much motivation to do something. And then we can move along this continuum where we can be extrinsically motivated to do something where we there are things outside of our control that influence us to be motivated to do something. And then we can move all the way towards this intrinsic motivation, where we're taking actions in our life um, that we want to, that we are autonomous in doing, that we feel like we have control over our life to doing. And so things like being interested in something, like I said, enjoyment, something, getting satisfaction for something. These are all internally, intrinsically regulated behaviors. And what the research finds is, as far as physical activity is when we put ourselves in that space of enjoyment, we have longer term adherence to things in our lives. And while I didn't ask that specific question or was not studying that specifically with my research, I believe that there's a pattern with older triathletes that that's what keeps them in it, that they enjoy it, that they are having fun. And it goes hand in hand with being internally motivated to challenge yourself, to be competitive against yourself. And I heard a lot of those themes in my research with the population of athletes that I study. So just to show you, um, when you finally get your PhD, it goes in a book. And here's all my work from my study. It's all here. A lot of work, but I enjoyed it. And that's what's interesting is, I'm not here to say life is always just, floating around and it's just happy, happy, happy. And you can live like that. But sometimes to be in that space that brings you that joy and that happiness, you have to work hard, right? Some of the people that I'm going to be having on my show, they are ultra endurance athletes. You don't get to this level of performance without putting hard work in, you know? So kind of goes hand in hand with discipline, consistency, hard work. all these things that are tied into going after your goals, going after your dreams. And, the self-determination theory really focuses on basic psychological needs of autonomy, competence, and relatedness. And so the belief is that the more you allow yourself to grow into spaces of um, your why, right? What you enjoy doing in your life, the more you take those actions to move your life in, excuse me, that direction, the more autonomy you have in that space. And then the more you allow yourself the opportunities to learn and to grow, you build competence in those areas, right? You build skills and experience and knowledge, which also, relates back to autonomy, right? The two go hand in hand. If you decide to go back to school and study something you always wanted to study, learn a new language, learn an instrument, take those actions towards something you enjoy, gain skills, right? They go hand in hand. And then relatedness, how much you can feel related to a sense of something, right? So for my participants in my study, they were highly autonomous in wanting to be a triathlete. They worked hard at the skills that are required to complete a triathlon, and they could relate it to their life and to the relationships in their lives in being part of the triathlon community. And so, this group of individuals, and if you have time and you're interested, my research is actually published right now on a database called ProQuest. It's where most dissertations are published these days, and I have it published for open access, so you should be able to get to it. It's called Exploring the Exercise Motivations and Perspectives of Successful Aging with Older Triathletes. It was published I guess probably last March, April 2025. Again, it's exploring the exercise motivations and perspectives of successful aging with older triathletes. It was such a great experience, I have to tell you. And choosing self-determination theory to ground this research within was just absolutely the best choice. I mean, there were other options out there, but for me, it really all came together and just feel so grateful for the whole experience, truthfully. So what I did in my study, just to dive a little bit deeper, if you're interested, well, the purpose of the study was to explore what motivated older triathletes to be physically active and how these factors influence their perspectives on successful aging. And so what I did is I conducted this study with what's called a mixed methods research study. So I had two ways of asking and answering my research question. I did it through quantitative research and qualitative research. So the quantitative research, I used existing instruments that I could gather some quantitative data and look at some of the statistics on that. So I used two instruments. One's called the Exercise Motives Inventory. I used a version 2, and the Exercise Motives and Gains Inventory. So I used those two instruments. I also developed my own questions. I had some survey development background from when I worked for the U.S. Office of Personnel Management at a graduate school long time ago, but I got some of those skill sets back then. So I designed some of my own questions, and with the approval of the Institutional Review Board at Concordia University, Chicago, my study got approved, and I ran the first phase of my study, which was the quantitative phase, July 18th through August 28th, 2024. I collected, had 100 questions on the survey part. I developed it through something called Qualtrics, which it's actually a fairly easy survey research package to use. So that was, a learning curve. I had to learn that in that process. A lot of competence, a lot of autonomy, and a lot of competence in this journey, the PhD journey. I won't get into the specifics of what I needed to do to launch that survey, but I gathered data on exercise adherence from these two instruments. The developers were David Markland and Lou Hardy. It was developed in 1993. It was developed within self-determination theory framework, and it asked 51 questions on each inventory. Now, I said 100, so I don't remember the exact details of how I structured them. I did them on Likert scales. I know that, but anyhow, if that number didn't match up, it's just because of how I formatted the survey. So if you're interested in these two instruments, exercise motives inventory, EMI2, or the exercise motives and gains inventory, EMGI, you can go there. It's open access. You can go through Bangor University in the United Kingdom, and if you put in exercise motivation, self-determination theory, it'll probably take you right to their website, and you'll see them. They're in PDF format, and you can download them, use them for your research. So the instruments looked at things like affiliation, that's the social aspects of exercising, appearance. Are you motivated by how you look, your physical appearance, the challenge? Are you motivated by competition, enjoyment, health pressures? Your doctor is telling you got to exercise, trying to avoid health problems, nimbleness, trying to be more agile or flexible, positive health, wanting to maintain, good health, revitalization because exercise feels good, it's invigorating, social recognition, gaining recognition for your accomplishments, strength and endurance, stress management, weight management. And so the two instruments ask those questions from different perspectives. One asks how you were motivated in those categories, and then what did you feel you gained from that from those categories. Okay, so that was phase one, and I gathered all that data, did all that data cleanup. I put it into SPSS statistics and started to transform that data into different variables and started to look at it and started to see. I used independent samples t-tests, one-way analysis of variance, ANOVA, and both descriptive statistics and inferential statistics. And I just started to look at it and I just started to see if there were any patterns in that data. And guess what? There were. And before I talk about that, I want to tell you about phase two. The second phase of my study was qualitative data collection. And I conducted that after I completed the survey analysis. And then I conducted interviews, one-on-one interviews with participants September 5th through September 27th, 2024. And it was astounding how many people wanted to participate in my study. I'm so grateful for it. I mean that with such genuine, heartfelt gratitude. It was amazing. I had to use a kind of a random sampling approach to pick participants for the interviews. But it just was incredible. So I conducted one-on-one interviews through Zoom. Um, my participants were all over it was international voice in my study, in the United States, all over. I have them written down and I will mention them, but because I'm blanking a bit at the moment, but I know New Zealand, Australia, Thailand, all over. It was incredible, really, truly. I put my data, actually the qualitative data, when you do qualitative analysis, you have to build themes and there's different ways to do it. So I did a little bit of it manually and then I did also did through a software package called Max QDA. And I did what's called thematic analysis, which is coding your data, constructing categories, looking for themes. And then I did meta-analysis, looking at both phases, looking at the survey data, looking at the interview data, and starting to figure out what all the data means. So in total, I had 193 people respond on the survey. You have to use something called G-Power, and so you have an idea of the sample size that you need for it to be meaningful. So I definitely hit my G-Power numbers. But then I had some kind of fallout from that original number. And then when I did some data cleanup, I had to, remove some people from the survey. So I ended up with 131. And again, I met my sample size requirements. And then I had 90 people sign up. I had asked on the interview, would you be interested in a one-on-one? I asked on the survey, excuse me, if you'd be interested in on a one-on-one interview, and I had a field to, leave your email. I had 90 people sign up. Obviously, I couldn't interview 90 people, but I ended up interviewing 18. And the thing about that with qualitative research is kind of the rule there is you just keep going until you feel like you've hit saturation, right? You're starting to hear the same things over and over again. And I really felt like every time I had an interview, I heard or learned something new. So I just kept going. Made more work for me, but it's okay because it was the right thing to do because you keep going, you keep digging until you feel like you've truly comprehensively answered your research questions. Okay? So my overall sample demographics, I had 131 participants. I had a pretty close split from male to female. 72 males, 59 females, so 55% male, 45% female. That's pretty incredible, for that to have randomly happened. The age range, again, remember, I had 65 and older. So 60% of my sample were between 65 and 69, 31% between 70 and 74, 7% between 75 and 79, 2% between 80 and 84, and I had one participant who was over 85. So when you think of these numbers and you think about older triathletes who people, in exercise motivation and maintaining these high levels of physical activity later in your life, I mean, 79 people just in my study. I mean, there's plenty more out there doing this type of physical activity. But at 79 people, 65, 69, 40, 70 to 74 years of age, 9, 75 to 79, 2, 80 to 84, and 1 at over 85. I think if I remember correctly, I believe that gentleman was 88. So just remarkable. There's lots of different demographics. I won't go through all of those because I'm trying to just kind of give you the pattern, the overall pattern, why enjoyment through self-determination theory, understanding human motivation is so important and informing your identities. Obviously, most were retired because of the age range, but I had 22% who are still working full time and or part-time. And then other was a lot of like charity work, coaching, for free, coaching people, and just was really interesting. Um, I didn't ask this question probably in the best way because I gave like a range for how many times people were training per week, and I probably should have I didn't think that people were training past a certain number, beyond 11, 12 times a week. So 61% said they trained 6 to 7 times a week, but I did get feedback that I really should have kept it a little bit more open-ended so I could have truly captured, because I think that people are, the participants in my study were probably training, more than maybe 2 times a day, just multiple training sessions per week. So that one I would probably want to go back and ask that question again to really fully understand the volume of training that's going on in this age group. 48% had completed a full Ironman. Okay, that's 63 participants out of the sample. It's incredible. 24% half Ironman. Obviously, the sprint, which is the shortest triathlon distance, was the most completed. But I mean, think about a full Ironman distance. If you're not familiar with it, it's over a 2 mile open water swim. It's a 112-mile bike ride. It's a marathon, 26.2-mile run. After all of that, a lot of times it's in locations that it's just challenging with hills, and so it's a remarkable level of physical activity and athleticism at a time in life when traditionally we think about aging with, age-related disease and decline, not, training for Ironmans. Okay, like I said, I had an international voice on the study. So here's my list, and I apologize, I couldn't remember off the top of my head, but Australia, Canada, Hong Kong, Japan, Luxembourg, New Zealand, Zambia. So I had participants from all those countries. Obviously, I had the most within the United States. I didn't plan to have an international voice. My survey just went out. I used a sampling um, strategy that allowed it to kind of snowball and take its own wings and grow and find the participants out there. I use different platforms to market and recruit for my study. So the fact that it reached kind of this international participation was just it was an incredible phenomenon, within my study, and I'm just so grateful for it. So when you talk about patterns, I asked, when did you participate in your first triathlon? Most had completed their triathlon over 10 years. So they've been in the sport for a long time. When I asked how important it is being a triathlon to them as they aged, I mean, almost, over 70%, close to 80% said it was very important to them as they aged. I asked, what value do you get from being a triathlete? 91% says it helps me manage my health. So they understand that being physically active gave them more energy. They like to keep busy. They like to keep their bodies busy. They love feeling fit, the thrill of doing it, the enjoyment, they enjoy the challenge, learning about new things, keeps me off the couch, role model, it challenges me. These are all statements that, if you're thinking about self-determination theory or even self-efficacy theory, where we focus on, how strong your beliefs are in something that you can do, you can see this pattern that these individuals are in it because they enjoy it and they love it. The pattern started to emerge when I said, what motivates you to be a triathlete? And then the top answers: physical health, physical challenge, mental health, and enjoyment. Okay. Rewards was found very low in my findings, which is interesting because that fits into this pattern. People are not, that's nice. It's nice to get on a podium. It's nice to win. It's nice to get a medal, but that isn't what's motivating them to stay in it. It was very clear in my study. And again, I asked, my motivation to be a triathlete is, and I asked questions in different ways to kind of build on, the meaningfulness of the numbers and the data. And again, to win awards was actually the lowest rated reason. So that would fall more towards extrinsic motivation. Participating in triathlons is important to me because it's how I stay physically fit. Um, and I'm competitive. It keeps me young. I mean, these were all top answers. Now, on those two surveys that I talked about, the EMI2, Exercise Motives Inventory, here again, a pattern starts to emerge when asked all these questions that are put into these different categories within the instrument, wanting to have good health, positive health, and enjoyment. Those were the top answers. Um, So interestingly enough, affiliation, which would be this sense of like the social connectedness and the importance of community, at this point wasn't super highly rated. Okay. And I'll come back to that later on. On the second instrument, the EMGI, the results, enjoyment, top answer. And again, positive health. And then interestingly enough, at the end, affiliation and health pressures. Remember that one, health pressures. That's somebody else telling you need to do it. So the pattern starts to emerge in the quantitative data, phase one of my study, where enjoyment is a very huge motivator. And again, as I've been talking about in episode 46, 47, and we'll be in 48, when we find things in our life, when we take actions to put things in our life that we enjoy, we are probably more likely to stick with them. And in this situation, and I'm a health promotion leader. I'm encouraging things that are healthy for us. Let's just make sure I have that caveat in there, physical activity and doing things that are good for your mental health, your physical health, and your relationships in your life. So I'm not going to get into the specific independent samples t-test results or the ANOVA results. I am happy if you're interested reach out to me. I'm happy to go over the detail in my results. But you can also, like I said, read it. It's on ProQuest. So just search Dr. Sarah Gordon, Concordia University, Chicago, exercise motivation and perspectives of aging for older triathletes. Okay. So I came out of that first phase saying, okay, this is interesting. I see a pattern here. I see a pattern where my sample of participants, the 131 people who took the survey, they're motivated by enjoyment. They're motivated by feeling physically healthy. They're not so motivated by extrinsic things like rewards. And I'm not so sure about this affiliation yet. So I'm going to keep, I don't know. I got to dig deeper. I got it in some of these other categories. I have to dig deeper to truly figure out what the patterns are and what emerges as the exercise motivations. So that's when I went into phase two, which are the one-on-one interviews. Like I said, I interviewed 18 people, turned out, and just makes sense because it's kind of the numbers that I had in the sample overall. Most were between 65, 69. I had 44 I'm sorry, 44%, eight participants, six participants who are 70 to 74, two 75 to 79, one in the 80 to 84, and one 85 plus, both within the United States. And I was fortunate enough to have interview an athlete from Canada, an athlete from Hong Kong, and an athlete from Zambia. Those were fun trying to plan those time zones. I remember that. That was fun. I think one I had to I don't know. I think I had to stay up like very late to catch that one, but it was fun. It was awesome. Okay, so I'm not going to go through all these st details here, but here's what I found. Okay, the major themes from the interviewing, phase two, I found healthy aging, sense of community, and enjoyment as the exercise motivators. Okay. Healthy aging, physical activity, cognitive health, avoiding health problems, reducing social isolation, spirituality, just who I am, being adaptable. All these kind of nuances in terms of what healthy aging might look like. Excuse me. And let me just say again, the way that these themes and this information is captured is by what people are saying. You analyze the content of what they're saying. You look for patterns, and there's ways to do that for qualitative research to ensure the trustworthiness and the credibility of that data. We don't use a word like validity with qualitative data. We use the word validity when we're running statistical analysis on our data. We can do that with numbers, right? We can transform data into numbers, but typically with qualitative data, we are looking for themes, for words, and for statements that come up over and over again, and then you analyze it in that way. Okay, so just want to make sure I explain that. Okay, enjoyment. Words are things like fun, love racing, love the sport, contagious, inspiring, exciting to train, physiological benefits of endorphins, feels great afterwards. All these kinds of little statements that were shared during these interviews all lead to enjoyment. And that, within self-determination theory, leads us back to being highly intrinsically motivated. Enjoyment is a highly intrinsically motivated behavior, okay? So that's where that fits within that theoretical framework. Sense of community was another major theme, being part of the triathlon community, making new friendships, existing friendships, training together, racing together, inspired by peers, common interests, and camaraderie. I have lots of quotes here that, why to demonstrate all that, but I think that I do not bore you. I won't read them all. I'll read a few just to give you a taste of what I was hearing. Participant 8 in my study said, getting up in the morning without aches and pains, that's the big thing. I don't have any ache or a pain, and that basically is a motivator to stay healthy, and it's working. And once something works, keep it going. That demonstrates that kind of desire for, um, to feel good, to have good health, positive health, healthy aging. And that's something that I did see in that first phase of my study. As far as sense of community, here's a couple little quotes. Participant 11, It's also a community though, and I think another piece that really surprised me was I'm friends with people who are much younger with, right? And I heard that. I heard older triathletes are training with younger triathletes, and younger triathletes are inspired by older triathletes. So there's this cross age range camaraderie that goes on within the community as well. Um, Participant 16. It was friends of mine that started getting me into it, and then training with them was great. A close group of friends keeps you going, and that's what motivated me. So, there's this social aspect of feeling part of the community, but at the end of the day, it's the individual who is taking the action to be part of it. They have this autonomous psychological need, you know, to move their lives in this direction where they find enjoyment in something that they're doing. And in this case, it was the sport of triathlon. Participant 6 says, I think that there's something to be said for the world of triathletes. I think they're a unique group of people. And as far as enjoyment, here's some examples. I like it. I like it. It feels good. I love the way it feels after working out during a workout when you're releasing those endorphins and your brain is feeling high. Yeah, brain, body thinks good. I mean, I like it. So it's comprehensive. It's a culmination. Enjoy it. Enjoy the achievement. You enjoy the challenge of it. Participant 15, I mean, it's painful when you're training and when you're competing, but that's the pleasure of it. And participant 7, well, I think, just the fact that I get up, I feel refreshed each day when I go out and exercise. I have the sense of accomplishment and strength. I think that's very different than a lot of people that don't do that level of exercise. I don't think like endorphins kick in enough that they get that great feeling. And I find it, again, just, very motivating. So that's interesting because you know, in phase one of my study, I started to see this pattern through the survey data of enjoyment, of a focus on physical health. I didn't see a strong, um, or it didn't rank as high the sense of community. But when I dug deeper into my interviews, definitely a motivator, definitely a pattern of motivation of the sense of community, the sense of affiliation. And that, let me tell you, as a dorky researcher. That's the beauty of mixed methods research. That's why we do it. Okay. That's why I did it because you don't know, the numbers are great, but sometimes you got to put in the qualitative piece behind the numbers. Excuse me 1 second. I'll have to do some editing on this one. But anyhow, trying to work from home today. But that's the beauty of doing mixed methods research is, okay, I'm back. It's busy here today. Anyhow, that's the reason you do mixed methods research studies. If you have an interest and you have the research and it warrants based on to use it based on the research questions that you're asking, right? What do you need to answer your research question? That's always kind of the first thing you ask yourself. What do I need to do in terms of this study to truly answer these research questions comprehensively? So that's why I did a mixed methods research study. And by digging deeper in those participant interviews, I did find that sense of community was a very strong motivator. There were definitely sub-themes in my study, competitive against self, competitive against others, achieving goals, athletic identity, which is interesting because that's, Andrew and I are going to talk about that on the next podcast episode about how through self-determination theory we build these identities. Stress management, weight management. So there were lots of little sub reasons people do it. But to answer the research questions comprehensively, you look for the major themes in the data. Okay. You do then what's called integrated meta inferences, integrated meta inferences, where you look at phase one and you phase two, and you come out with these overall impressions from the research. And I have this nice chart which I think maybe I will try to present this one day a little bit more professionally. But I just wanted to get on here and just talk today like a real person. So here you got it. Um, Again, healthy aging is it's more encompassing than just what I found on phase one, positive health. So it just involved a little bit more. So I kind of expanded on that from, positive health was the category from the survey instruments I used. After the interviews, it kind of just expanded into the understanding being motivated by healthy aging. Enjoyment was consistent across both strands of my research, phase one and phase two. And like I said, the interesting information that kind of emerged from the qualitative phase of my study was this sense of community, was this relatedness and being part of, being able to relate these things that you enjoy in your life into more meaningful, excuse me, just more meaning. So, okay. So what did all that mean? Right? You're like, why is she doing this today? It means that, well, first, my study filled a gap. So when I went, whenever before you conduct a research study, especially as a PhD student, you go to the literature. You try to find something that's unique, that's original, that hasn't been done before. And when I went to the research, there was definitely research on sports participation with older triathletes. There wasn't a lot out there with with older athletes. There wasn't a lot out there for older triathletes that was not looking at performance, right? Or how performance changes as we get older. If there was maybe one study that I can remember that took a group of individuals who were physically fit and they trained for a triathlon and then they talked about their experiences, but they weren't triathletes going into the study. And none of them looked at exercise motivation and perspectives of successful aging. So my study definitely fills that gap. It also says that older triathletes are highly motivated to maintain optimal health and successful aging. And why is that important? Because we know if you look at the epidemiology on aging and age-related disease, chronic illnesses, we know we have problems. We have, very large percentages of people that have neurodegenerative diseases, metabolic diseases, cardiovascular disease. I mean, there's all kinds of, cancers and arthritis and osteoarthritis, diabetes, Alzheimer's disease. I mean, there's just a lot of disease as we age. Some of it is random, some of it we don't know. Maybe it's genetic. A lot of it's environment. A lot of it's the choices that we make. And so, I think it's important. I think this data from my study is important because it shows people that are getting to these later ages in their lives and they're maintaining physical fitness at that time in their life. Sense of community and enjoyment. Again, this is important because in our messaging in terms of health promotion with older adults, it's important not to isolate yourself. It's important to find things. I'm not saying you have to be a triathlete. I'm not saying you have to live this type of lifestyle, but my research is clear that if the patterns that if you find things that you enjoy, you're most likely going to continue to do that and feel good about aging, have quality of life in aging. So I think that, and to feel part of something bigger than yourself, to relate your life to something bigger than just yourself. Motivation through self-determination theory comes through autonomy, competence, and relatedness. My study really demonstrated that. And it was not based on extrinsic things like rewards, health pressures, appearance, or social recognition. These were really people who were in it because they enjoyed the physical challenge of it. They enjoyed competing against themselves. And they liked how it made them feel in aging. It allowed them to live healthier lifestyles. So basically, training for and competing in triathlon facilitated this healthy lifestyle, ultimately impacting quality of life. Now, why did I decide to go through all that? Well, one, I guess, I'm going to be presenting this at the end of June. And so I think it's important to start talking about it. I haven't really had an opportunity on my podcast to just talk a bit about my research. This is the first time I've actually done this. I guess I'll get better at it the more I talk about it. But the implications of my research, we're living longer. We know that. Modern medicine allows us to. But I've read things like, and this quote is so powerful, like just because we're living longer, are we living those added years with good health? And if we are living longer, don't we want our health span to match those years where we can be active and we can enjoy our lives, right? And we know that I mean, there's so much research out there. We know, and I can make the statement, we know physical activity has a positive impact on our lives across our lifespan, you know? The participants in my study are showing that, demonstrating that. So in some ways, the study helps to build a narrative. Research isn't cause and effect. This is not saying this, if you do this, this is going to happen. This is saying, let's start a narrative. Let's start a conversation. Let's start to understand things so we can all age with better health. Okay. We can all take steps, autonomous steps to live our best lives. Okay. I would love to continue this research. I would love to have an opportunity. There's so many different ways to look at it. There's older athletes in other sports. I'd love to ask them similar questions, see if they're motivated in the same way. I mean, I have a hunch that, whether we looked at just older swimmers, golfers, pickleball players, softball players, track runner, whatever sport that older athletes are involved in, I have a hunch that enjoyment is a huge part of it, But I would love to do the research to build this narrative and understanding of exercise motivation as we age. So that's it. I kind of went through that quickly. I'm sad about Edward Deasy. I did not know him. I know his name because I referenced it so much in my dissertation. I know Professor Richard Ryan, is still active and will be at the conference, and I look forward to meeting him. But I think sometimes things just, I don't know. I mean, gosh, it's sad that he passed within the timing that it happened. But here we are moving into the end of June, early July, this international conference with researchers and practitioners and educators and, all these people across the world who believe in self-determination theory, who understand it, who look at it as a way to understand behavior, to encourage positive outcomes in life, and to help people as for myself as a health promotion leader, to help people move through hard things, overcome obstacles, take more control in your life. I talk from a lot of personal experience. I had a lot of obstacles in my life, especially in my PhD journey. Just going back to get my PhD in my 50s, that took a lot of internal strength to do that. And I will tell you, it changed my life. It absolutely changed my life. It changed how I see things. Um, I would argue for the better, right? It was hard, but I will argue that it changed my life for the better. And so I'm so grateful for it. I'm grateful to Concordia University for believing in me, for accepting me into the program. I'm grateful for all the professors that gave me so much encouragement along the way. I did have one naysayer, but that's okay. It was very early on, and he solidified for me why I was there, what my why was, what my purpose was. So it was good. I'm grateful. Actually, the first time I'm going to say it this way, I am grateful somebody told me I was not going to make it because that was the switch. That was the moment amongst one other switch I can think of when I just said, "Ah, you know what? I'm here for me. And whatever happens, whatever the journey looks like, I'm in the journey for myself." And that's autonomous thinking. That's self-determination theory. So I'm grateful for it. Steve Jobs said, famously. Sometimes I say that infamously. I think you can use it either way. Anyhow, random thought. Steve Jobs says you can't connect the dots looking forward. You can only connect them looking back. It's such a true statement. So think about your life. Think about where you want to move it. L- Listen to me. Hear my voice. I had so many reasons to quit. I really did, but I didn't. And I'm here, and I'm here to remind you day in and day out. Don't quit. Go after the things in your life that you want, that you always wanted to do. Okay? Might take some hard work, but you'll get there. Never give up on yourself. Never give up on yourself. We're here for such a short period of time. If you're stuck in a job you hate, if you're stuck in a relationship that you're not thriving in, if you're stuck in some situation that you can't thrive, you can't be you, you can't form the identity that you want for your life and for yourself, go read self-determination theory, all right? Go understand how to take these small steps to move your life forward. Small steps, one action step today, one small step. Go to the gym, go take a walk, go look online for that class you always wanted to take. Take that one step, move your life forward. You have the energy within you. You have the control within you to do that. I promise you. I am a living example of it. Okay, that's what I want to say. You got to meet Louie on this episode today. You got to see Macy moving around. Now they're nice and quiet, sitting in the background. I'll be back on next week with my friend Andrew Schubauer. It'll definitely be a more professional platform. I appreciate your patience with me today. I hope that this was interesting. I hope that you learned something. I will keep going. I will get better at being an educator through my podcast platform. I will have confidence going to this conference. I will look forward to coming back and sharing it with you. If you listened to the last episode 47, you know why I just made that statement. But we're all just trying to do the best we can every day of our lives, and that's the point, okay? To live your best life. And I always love to say from the inside out, because we know there's so much goes on physiologically within our bodies. We'll take good care of ourselves. We can shine on the outside and we can live our best lives. All right, everybody, have a wonderful week. It's Monday, right? I don't know where you live, but maybe it's Tuesday or depending on time zones, maybe you haven't hit Monday, but either you went through it or you're close to it. Mondays are good, they're the start of a new week, a new productive week. We can we can set things in motion for ourselves and have a great week. And don't get discouraged in the setbacks during the week. Sometimes just take a pause. You'll get through it. All right, that's my message. I wish everybody a wonderful day. As always, I am tremendously grateful to have this platform to talk. And I'll be back. I'll be back within, well, towards the end of the week. All right, everybody. Thank you. God bless. Bye.